The dragon that wouldn't listen. The sun burned hot over the desert outpost. Soldiers stood in lines, their silver armor shining in the light. They were all silent, waiting for the Empress to speak. But she said nothing. She just stood there, her face hard and her eyes locked on the giant creature behind her. It was a war dragon, 30 feet tall, wings folded tight, black scales like stone. Its yellow eyes glowed with fire. And right now it was angry. It growled low and deep, the ground shaking under its claws. 3 beastmasters had already failed to calm it. One was still lying on the sand, breathing hard, blood on his sleeve. The others dared not go near. The Empress crossed her arms. "Worthless," she said coldly. "Not one of you can control it." From the back of the crowd, a soft voice spoke up. "I can try." Everyone turned. It was a human. Not a soldier, not a noble, just a mechanic. His hands were dirty, his face sunburnt. He wore old coveralls and had a wrench on his belt. The guards laughed. "You?" one said. "You fix broken cargo bots, not dragons." But the Empress raised her hand. The laughter stopped. She looked at the human. "What's your name?" "Dax," he said. "You think you can fix this?" She pointed at the dragon, which was now huffing and shaking its head like it smelled danger. Dax nodded. "I think it's in pain. Let me check it." "If you fail," the Empress said, "it will eat you." Dax stepped forward slowly. He could feel every eye watching him. His boots crunched the sand as he moved closer to the dragon. The beast growled. Its tail swiped the ground, throwing dust in the air. The soldiers flinched. The Empress said nothing. She was curious now. This human was either stupid or something else. Dax reached the dragon's side. He didn't touch it yet. He just stood there, looking at it closely. The dragon turned its head and stared down at him. "You're not bad," Dax said softly. "You're just hurting, aren't you?" The dragon snorted, smoke coming from its nostrils. Very slowly, Dax reached up and placed a hand near the dragon's front leg, not touching yet. "May I?" he whispered. The dragon didn't move. He touched the scale. Warm, vibrating with tension. Dax moved his fingers gently, checking behind the shoulder. He found something. A metal node, half hidden under the scale. A control chip. It was burned and cracked. Wires were sticking out. Sparks jumped now and then. Dax frowned. No wonder. He looked back at the Empress. "It's not wild. It's in pain. This chip is broken." "What chip?" she asked. "The pain control. You use these to make it obey, right?" "That's classified," one of the royal guards muttered. "Well, it's broken," Dax said. "Every time it moves, it sends pain signals through its nerves. That's why it's lashing out." The dragon growled again, but softer now. Its breath was hot, but its eyes seemed calmer. Dax slowly sat down in front of it. "You're not a monster," he whispered. "You're just tired." The dragon lowered its head slightly. The soldiers gasped. The Empress took one step forward, her eyes wide. "Did it just bow?" she asked. Dax didn't look up. He just kept talking to the dragon like it was a friend. "I can help you," he said. "But you have to trust me. No more pain, no more chains." The dragon grunted. Then to everyone's shock it lay down, flat on the sand, like a pet waiting for care. The Empress stared, her mouth slightly open. The dragon had never done that before. Not for her. Not for anyone. "Bring him tools." She said. The guards didn't move. "Now!" she shouted. They ran. Dax turned his head and smiled. "I'll need a clean scanner, soldering thread, and a pain shutoff switch." "You'll have them," the Empress said, as the guards rushed to fetch. His tools, the dragon rested its giant head near Dax. The human placed his hand gently on its snout. "You're not a weapon," Dax said. "You're a living soul." The Empress kept watching, and for the first time in many years, she felt something strange in her chest. Hope, but also fear, because if her strongest dragon had chosen this human mechanic, what else could he change? Metal hands, soft heart. The desert winds howled outside the outpost walls as night fell. Stars shimmered above like tiny eyes watching everything below. But inside the metal repair shed, all was quiet, except for the slow, steady sound of breathing. It came from the war dragon, now lying still across the floor, its massive body rising and falling in rhythm with the dim light of the machines around it. Dax knelt beside the beast, his hands moving with care. The dragon's armored chest was open slightly where he had peeled back thick layers of scale to reach the damaged control chip. Sparks flickered gently as he worked, but he wasn't in a rush. This wasn't just a job. It was personal now. He spoke softly as he adjusted wires and touched sensors. "You poor thing," he murmured. "How long have they used you like this?" The dragon rumbled in its throat, not in anger, but in response. A low, tired sound. Its tail twitched faintly, but it did not rise. Dax reached out, his hand brushing along a scar just beneath one of the shoulder joints. It was old, nearly hidden by the scales, but the skin around it was softer than the rest. That told Dax everything. "This isn't just from war," he whispered. "This is from being beaten." The realization made his chest tighten. He had seen broken machines. He had seen abused workers too, on the outer colonies where humans like him were treated as tools. But this was worse. Because the dragon wasn't just hurt. It had been trained to obey through pain. He sat back on his heels and wiped sweat from his brow. The heat of the dragon's body warmed the cold night air, but it didn't feel dangerous anymore. It felt alive. Not just a beast, a being. The door hissed open behind him. He didn't turn. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "I had to see for myself," came the voice of the Empress, softer than before. No command in it. Just curiosity. Dax stood slowly and faced her. Her royal robe shimmered in the low light. 2 silent guards stood outside the door, but she had come in alone. "Well?" he asked. "Did you come to take back your dragon?" The Empress's eyes went to the creature lying on the floor. Its wings were relaxed now. No tension in its muscles. Its breathing calm. Something about the sight made her pause before she spoke. "It has never rested like that," she said. "Not since it was a hatchling." "Because it's never felt safe," Dax replied. "It's been taught to fear you." The words were sharp. They hung in the air like a blade between them. But the Empress didn't lash out. Instead, she stepped forward. "You speak to it like a person." "Because it is one," Dax said. "You just never bothered to listen." A long silence followed. The Empress knelt beside the dragon, her movements slow. She reached out a hand, but stopped just short of touching it. The dragon opened one eye. Yellow light met hers. But it didn't growl. It didn't pull away. It simply blinked, and then closed its eye again. Dax watched her carefully. "You never looked close, did you?" She lowered her hand. "I thought it was just instinct. Battle rage, nothing more." "It's more," Dax said. "You've forced it to obey, but it never trusted you. It only obeyed because it had no choice." The Empress turned her head toward him. "And now?" "Now it's deciding," he said. "And so are you." She stood and looked down at the dragon. Her face was unreadable, but her next words surprised Dax. "What would it take to fix this?" she asked. "Not just the chip. All of it." Dax blinked. "You mean rebuild the bond?" She nodded. He stepped back to the table, picking up a small scanner. "First, remove the pain node. Second, stop using control chips on living creatures. And third, yes, treat it like it matters." The Empress stared at him. No ruler had ever been spoken to like that by a human from the outer colonies. But she didn't scold him. She didn't threaten him. Instead, she said, "Then, show me how." Dax looked at her, truly looked, and saw that behind the crown and armor was something he didn't expect: doubt, and maybe even guilt. He turned back to the dragon and said, "All right, big guy, let's finish this." He picked up a tool and touched it gently to the chip. As the sparks danced and the node came loose, The dragon gave one long exhale, like it had waited years for that breath. Outside, the stars shifted overhead. But inside, something bigger had changed. The beast no longer feared, and the Empress had started to listen. The truth under the scales, the sun had not yet risen. A faint blue glow spread across the edges of the desert sky, brushing the horizon like gentle fingers. Inside the shelter, the dragon still slept. Curled like a mountain of breathing armor, its scales caught the first hints of morning light and shimmered softly. For the first time in years, it rested without chains, without sedation, and without fear. Dax hadn't slept. He sat near the dragon's front leg, his back against the cold wall, eyes open, mind heavy. He had seen machines break down. He had even seen people do the same, but he had never seen something so powerful act so helpless. Not until this dragon, as the Empress returned just before sunrise. She found him still awake, his eyes red but clear. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she stood quietly, watching him from the doorway as the soft wind outside carried the scent of sand and metal. "You didn't leave," she said at last. "Neither did you," Dax replied. She stepped forward slowly. Her long robe dragged slightly on the dusty floor, but she didn't seem to notice. Her eyes were fixed on the dragon. "It let you remove the pain chip," she said, not as a question, but with wonder. "It let me, because I asked," Dax said, still seated. "You ever ask it anything?" The Empress gave a tired smile. "No, one ever told me to ask. I was raised to give orders, not questions." "And what did that give you?" Dax asked, standing slowly. "A weapon that turns on your own people? A beast that's feared by everyone, including you?" She winced but didn't deny it. Dax took a few steps toward the table where the broken pain node now sat, blackened and cracked. He picked it up and held it toward her. This is what made it disobey you. Not its heart, not its nature, just this little piece of tech. Someone shoved it deep into its brain and told it, obey or suffer." She looked at the tiny object, her face unreadable. "Who ordered the chip to be used?" Dax asked. "Was it you?" She hesitated, then answered. "No. It was done long before I became Empress. The dragons were trained by the High Council. They believed emotion made them weak." Dax scoffed. "Emotion is what makes them strong. Without it, they're just machines with wings." She walked to the dragon's side and knelt just as Dax had done before. She didn't reach to touch it. This time she simply looked. Closely. With the kind of eyes that wanted to understand instead of control. "I don't know what it's thinking," she whispered. "Good," Dax said. "Now you're finally being honest." The dragon stirred slightly. Its long tail moved gently like a breeze over sand. One eye opened and looked at her. She didn't flinch. "Can it forgive me?" she asked. "That's not up to me," Dax said. "But if you really want to earn its trust, start by hearing its story." She looked at him confused. "How?" "It doesn't speak." "No voice doesn't mean no story," Dax said. "Every scar, every growl, every twitch. Those are pages of its book. You just need to read them." They stood there in silence, both, watching the beast breathe. Then Dax said something she wasn't expecting. "I used to be a soldier." She blinked. "You?" He nodded. "Before the mechanics. Before the outer colonies. I fought in the Rim Wars. I saw dragons up close. The angry kind. The broken kind. The kind that screamed before they burned everything." The Empress listened, surprised by his voice. Calm but layered with pain. "I thought they were monsters," Dax continued. "But after that war, I found one dying in the wreckage. Small, still young. It had no chip, no control wire. It was just scared. I fixed its wing. It stayed with me for a few weeks. Then it left. No growls, no fire. Just, thanks." "You never told anyone?" she asked. "What would it change?" Dax said. Humans weren't allowed near dragons after the war, especially not ones that showed mercy. She nodded slowly, understanding more now than she ever had. And this one, my dragon, what do you see in it? Dax looked at the resting beast. A survivor, a prisoner, and maybe a leader. The Empress turned back to the dragon. I thought I was the one leading the empire. Maybe you were, Dax said. But the people don't follow strength alone. They follow meaning. They follow symbols. And this dragon, if treated right, could become more than a weapon. It could be hope. Her eyes softened. But only, Dax added, if you stop trying to own it. She lowered her head. Her voice was quieter than before. Then teach me, she said. Outside, the first rays of sunlight broke over the desert. Shadows stretched long across the ground. Inside the shelter, something had shifted. Not just the dragon's heart, but the Empress's. For the first time, she wasn't giving orders. She was asking for guidance, and the dragon was listening. Fire in the skies. The peace didn't last long. By the time the desert sun reached its peak, the sky above the outpost had darkened, not with clouds but with ships. Black warcraft shaped like knives cut through the sky, their engines silent, their shadows falling over the sand like a warning. The Empress stood on the balcony of the outpost's main tower, her robe whipped by the wind. She stared at the approaching fleet, her jaw clenched. They had come. Her enemies had watched from the shadows, waiting for a sign of weakness. Word of her dragon's disobedience had traveled faster than light. And now, the rival houses had sent their response. An invasion. Inside, the outpost, alarms screamed. Soldiers scrambled to man the turrets. Officers shouted orders. Civilians fled toward the bunkers. But amid the chaos, one person moved calmly. Dax. He stood in the dragon's repair chamber, his hands gliding over the tools one last time. The dragon lay still, but its eyes were open now, watching him, understanding him. They're coming for her, Dax said softly. And maybe for you too. The dragon made a low, rising sound. It wasn't a growl. It was something deeper, almost like a question. Dax nodded. Yes, we'll fly, but not like before. This time, no chains, no commands. You choose. The dragon rose slowly. It stretched its wings. One spark lit behind its throat. Not rage, not pain. Power, pure, and ready. The door opened with a hiss. The Empress walked in, followed by 2 guards in full battle armor. You have to ground it, one guard snapped. We need full control override before it takes off. No, Dax said firmly. You chain it again, it burns everything, even you. We can't trust a beast. Then trust me, Dax cut in. The Empress raised a hand, silencing her guards. He's right, she said. Let it choose. The dragon walked past her. Its head turned slightly as it passed, just enough to look at her. It didn't bow, it didn't growl, but it acknowledged her, and that was enough. Outside, the battle had already begun. Enemy fighters tore through the sky, launching plasma bolts at the defense towers. Explosions lit up the sand. The air turned hot and sharp with the scent of fire. Soldiers pointed to the sky as the war dragon shot upward like a black arrow, its wings spread wide, catching the light like polished stone. On its back, Dax sat without armor, without reins, without control chips. Just trust. The Empress watched from the balcony, breathless. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing she had ever seen. The enemy pilots saw the dragon coming and panicked. Their scanners screamed warnings. The beast moved faster than their targeting systems could track. With one roar, it cut through the lead formation, its fire spiraling like a storm. 2 ships burst into flame instantly. But what shocked everyone wasn't the destruction. It was the precision. Dax didn't shout. He didn't pull any reins. He simply raised his hand, and the dragon banked left. He pointed and it followed. It didn't just burn everything. It chose what to hit. A fuel carrier. A command cruiser. A weapons platform. Each one went down with clean, controlled fire. On the ground, soldiers stared up in awe. They had seen dragons fight before, but never like this. This one wasn't wild. It was thinking, hunting and obeying by choice. Inside the command center, officers surrounded the Empress. "We must launch the second dragon unit," one said. "No," she replied. "But our defenses are no longer the strongest thing in the sky," she said. "He is." Back in the air, Dax leaned low over the dragon's neck. They were high now, flying through fire and smoke. Ships chased them, lasers flying past on both sides. One enemy cruiser locked on. "They're aiming for your chest," Dax whispered. "You know what to do." The dragon turned sharply, folding its wings and dropping into a spiral. The enemy shot missed wide. Then, in a flash, the beast flared, its wings and surged upward, tail whipping through the cruiser's belly. Metal and flame filled the air. The dragon roared, not in anger, but in warning. The rest of the enemy fleet hesitated. Below, the Empress saw it happen. Her enemies retreating. "They're falling back," her guard said in disbelief. But the Empress wasn't smiling. Her eyes stayed on the dragon, still soaring high above, because in that moment, she understood something terrifying and powerful. This human, mechanic, this man from the forgotten colonies had become something no general, no noble, no beastmaster had ever managed to be. A partner to a dragon. And the galaxy would not forget what it saw that day. Betrayal in the palace. The fire in the skies faded to smoke on the horizon. By nightfall, the enemy fleet was gone, burned, broken, or fleeing into the blackness of space. Cheers had risen across the outpost. Soldiers wept. Engineers collapsed, in relief. Some even fell to their knees as the dragon landed, its wings folding gently, its steps soft against the scorched ground. And on its back, Dax slid down without fanfare. No salute. No victory speech. Just dust on his clothes and exhaustion in his eyes. But not everyone celebrated. In the far halls of the Empress's palace, within shadows thick with silk and secrets, powerful voices whispered. Voices that had never bent their knees to a human, let alone watched one tame a weapon that even they feared. General Vorak, the highest military commander of the inner throne worlds, poured a dark drink into a glass and stared at the red liquid as if it held answers. Across the chamber, a noble woman with crystal tattoos on her forehead paced like a caged animal. "He must be removed," she hissed, "before others begin to follow him instead of us." "He's just a mechanic," Vorak replied, sipping. "But the beast follows him, and now, so does the Empress." She stopped pacing. "You saw her. She stood back and let him lead the skies. Our Empress stood behind a human." Vorak's fingers tightened around his glass. He didn't answer, because deep inside, he knew they were already too late. Dax had no idea that death followed behind his footsteps now. He walked alone, through the halls of the palace, the guards bowing slightly but watching him with cold, unreadable eyes. Some moved aside quickly, afraid. Others looked at him with barely hidden resentment, but none dared speak. He made his way to the dragon's new resting chamber, a massive dome-shaped hall, specially built for the Empire's prized creature, except now the chains had been removed. No more shock pads, no more fear. The dragon lay curled in the center, dozing, its chest rising slowly with each breath. It had begun to heal, not just its body but something deeper. Dax smiled as he watched it, then turned and walked back down the corridor. He never reached the end of it. A hand grabbed his shoulder, then a blade pierced his side. He gasped, stumbling, his knees hitting the polished floor hard. The world tilted sideways. Blood ran down his shirt. A voice growled behind him. Familiar, rough. You were never meant to stand beside her. Dax tried to turn his head, but his vision blurred. The last thing he saw was the edge of a shadow disappearing into another hall then. Darkness. But he didn't die. He awoke to the sound of rumbling. Deep, furious rumbling. His eyes opened slowly, pain blooming through every nerve. He was in a healing tank, warm fluid around him, wires connected to his chest. Outside the glass, chaos, red lights, screaming, and a roar that cracked the very walls of the palace. The dragon had found him. Guards had tried to keep it out. They failed. The beast had torn through 6 armored doors, smashed reinforced walls, and melted 2 stun cannons with a single breath. And now it stood in the royal hall, blood dripping from its claws, its eyes blazing with fire. Royal guards formed a shaky line in front of the Empress. "Stand down!" one of them shouted. The dragon growled, low and long. But then, before anything, worse happened. The Empress raised her hand. "No one attacks it," she said. Her voice was calm. The guards froze. The dragon stomped forward, the ground shaking. Then it stopped in front of her, its chest heaving. "You're not here for me," she whispered. It turned its head toward the infirmary wing. She understood immediately. "Take me to him," she said. When they reached the healing chamber, Dax was just barely awake. He looked weak, pale, but alive. The Empress stood beside him, her face unreadable. Then slowly, she turned to her guards. "Seal every exit," she said. "Find who did this. We believe it was. Find them," she said again, colder. This time, outside, the dragon lay near the glass tank like a silent guardian. And inside, Dax opened one swollen eye and said, barely above a breath, "Told you it would choose." The Empress said nothing, but her fingers curled into a fist. This time she didn't just feel guilt, she felt rage, because someone had dared to strike the very heart of something she was beginning to believe in. And now, she was no longer just a ruler standing above it all. She was part of the fire. A bond beyond species it rained on the palace that day. Not the kind of rain that cleaned or refreshed, but cold, silent rain that made the tall towers weep down their glassy sides like they were mourning something. Inside the high infirmary, no voices rose, no servants moved. Only the slow, steady beep of a healing monitor broke the quiet as Dax lay inside the recovery chamber, still weak, still bleeding slowly from the wound meant to end him. The Empress sat beside the glass, hands folded in her lap, her crown removed. For hours, she hadn't spoken, not to the doctors, not to the guards, not even to the dragon curled just beyond the chamber window, its massive head resting close to the wall as though it were keeping watch. It hadn't moved since it brought her here. Not once. And when Dax stirred, when he shifted slightly, eyes twitching, breath hitching, it was not the doctors who reacted first. It was the dragon. Its eye opened. It lifted its head. Its tail thumped the ground once, then again, and the Empress stood, heart caught in her throat, unsure what to feel, relief or fear. When Dax finally opened his eyes, his vision was blurry, but the silhouette of the Empress was unmistakable, and behind her the soft glow of yellow eyes. "You're still here," he rasped. The Empress leaned closer to the glass. "I didn't leave." He smiled faintly. Neither did he. She hesitated, then asked, "Why didn't he go wild again?" "They hurt you." And he still held back. "Because he's not just a beast," Dax whispered. "He knows revenge would only prove them right." The Empress lowered her gaze. She had known that once, long ago, before politics taught her to control, to silence, to conquer. Now, a creature she once called a weapon had shown more honor than half her council. Outside, word of Dax's survival spread across the empire like a wildfire that refused to be put out. The people spoke his name, some in fear, some in awe, a few in anger, but most in wonder, not because he commanded the dragon, but because the dragon had chosen to protect him, and not once had it obeyed anyone else since. The High Council convened in a secret chamber the next night. Anger filled the air like smoke. "He threatens the order," said one elder. "The Empress listens to him now." A human, repeated another, "with the loyalty of our last living war dragon." The chamber doors opened with a loud groan, and the Empress walked in. Not with guards, not with robes, just herself, and, beside her, walking calmly like a shadow that had grown wings, was the dragon. The council froze. No one spoke. "You fear him," the Empress said, "because he is not from bloodlines or banners, because he didn't rise by our rules." She looked around the room slowly. "But that is exactly why he must stay." The elders shifted uncomfortably. "He saved me," she continued, "not just from death, but from blindness. For years we ruled with fear. We bent creatures to our will. We broke minds. And in doing so, we nearly destroyed what made us great." She placed her hand on the dragon's neck. It didn't flinch. "He didn't force this dragon to obey," she said. "He listened, he learned, and he treated it with care. That bond is more powerful than any warship." Vorak, seated near the back, stood slowly. "And what is he to you now?" he asked, voice tight. "An advisor? A symbol? Or a rival?" "None," she said, and then she paused. "He is my equal." Gasps echoed through the room, but she didn't stop. "From this day, Dax will sit beside me in matters of counsel and of science. He will oversee the healing of every creature once controlled by pain. And the dragon will no longer be called a weapon." Her voice softened, but the words landed like thunder. "It will be called by its name." One of the elders leaned forward, confused. "It has a name?" The Empress turned. Dax, now supported by a medical brace, walked slowly into the chamber, and at his side the dragon rumbled deeply, then lowered its massive head toward him. Dax reached up and touched its snout. "His name," Dax said quietly, "is Varen." The council room fell silent. Outside, the rain began to fade, and somewhere deep in the city below, children whispered that the Empress had bowed, not to a dragon, but to a bond that even the stars now watched with wonder. Her dragon's final choice days passed. The sun rose and fell over the capital with quiet rhythm, but the Empire no longer felt the same. Something had shifted, something more than politics or titles. It was a change in breath, in heartbeat, a change in how people looked up at the palace with wide eyes, not in fear, but in hope. And at the center of it all was the bond no one could explain, a human mechanic, a war dragon once known only for fire and death, and an empress who dared to change. Inside the palace courtyard, flowers had begun to bloom again where once ash and smoke had filled the air. Children gathered at the iron gates just to catch a glimpse of the great black dragon as it perched silently above the high walls, watching over the city like a guardian carved from living stone. Some called it a miracle. Others whispered it was a sign the Empire's age of cruelty had ended. But not everyone welcomed the change. From the far border worlds, rival leaders stirred in silence. They saw the Empress's compassion as weakness, the dragon's mercy as a mistake. And one morning, under the cover of fog, a message arrived, a demand. Submit the dragon to the control chip again, or war will return. The Empress read the message alone in her chamber. Her fingers trembled as she held the cold metal scroll. The official seal burned into its surface like a threat carved into flesh. She didn't call her generals. She didn't summon her court. She walked, alone, to Dax's chamber, where he now lived in a quiet corner of the palace. He opened the door before she even knocked. "You read it," he said. "Yes," she replied. "And?" "They want him back in chains." Dax exhaled. "Then they never understood him to begin with." She nodded. Then for the first time her voice cracked. "They'll come, with fleets, with weapons, and they'll say I've failed to rule." Dax placed a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe that's what they'll say. But when they come, they won't be fighting a ruler, fighting." He looked into her eyes. "They'll be fighting someone who finally listened." The next day, the Empress stood before her people in the Grand Circle, a place once used to execute traitors. Now it was filled with citizens, soldiers, and off-world guests. The tension was thick in the air. Dax stood beside her, silent. Varen, the dragon, rested behind them, wings folded neatly, eyes scanning every movement in the crowd. The Empress raised her voice. "We were told to chain our guardian again, to break his will, to make him a slave once more." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "But I will not," she said, and her voice rang like a blade through the air. "Because he is not our pet, not our weapon. He is a being of choice. And today, I offer that choice to him again." She turned. "Varen," she said, "they fear you because they do not understand you. But if you leave now, no one will stop you, not even me. If you stay, you will face their war. And I will not command you. I will only ask." The entire square fell silent. Then, slowly, the dragon stood. It stepped forward. 1, 2, 3. Heavy steps that made the stone beneath it tremble. It moved past the Empress, past Dax, to the very edge of the platform. And there, with a growl that echoed from every tower, it spread its wings and let out a roar that cracked the skies. The people shouted, not in fear, but in celebration, because they knew. The dragon had made its choice. The enemy fleet never landed. When they reached orbit and saw the dragon soaring above the palace, no chains, no devices, only freedom, they understood what the message meant. A dragon who chose to defend, a human who earned that trust, an empress who no longer ruled by fear. They retreated without a shot. Years passed, and stories grew. They spoke of the day a mechanic stood beside a ruler and rewrote the fate of a kingdom. They spoke of a dragon who had once burned cities, now flying over orphan shelters and peace councils. They spoke of the Empress, not as a conqueror, but as a listener, a changer, a friend of beasts. But above all, they told one story the most. Even the alien Empress couldn't believe it. Her dragon obeyed a human mechanic, and in every corner of the stars people whispered one truth. Some powers can't be forced. Some loyalties can't be commanded. They must be earned, scale by scale, word by word, breath by breath. And the bond they formed, it changed a galaxy forever.